Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And once again, welcome to the back of the range. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 220. Before we get to this week's guest, I'd like to mention some achievements from around the college golf landscape. Congrats to Jackson Suber and Ole Miss for capturing the clean sweep at White Sands in the Bahamas. Suber with the individual win. That is going to help him tremendously in the PGA Tour U standings. And the Rebels as a team captured the team title. Nice way for them to enter the break. But I also need to finally recognize one of the hottest teams of the fall coming out of the Big 12 Conference. Yeah, you guessed it. I'm talking about the Kansas Jayhawks. What? You thought I was going to say Oklahoma. Yeah, they've had a great fall as well. They won at Eastlake recently, and I saw them win at Merido. No disrespect to Coach Hibble and the rest of the Sooners, but Kansas, Kansas has won 4 consecutive stroke play events in the fall. They just ended the season with their win in Hawaii. They won by 20. So whatever's going on at KU, congrats to them. As you can imagine, I will be catching up with Luke Kluver, Harry Hillier, the rest of the Jayhawks in the spring, and might actually need to get one of them or maybe Coach Burmel on the podcast. So Rock Chalk Jayhawk, incredible performance in the fall. My guest on this episode is Henry Shimp. Way back in 2019, which seemed so long ago, Shimp was part of the national championship team that defeated Texas at the Blessings in Arkansas. We spoke about that spring run to the national championship, which had several ups and downs and pivotal moments. We spoke about his decision to return to Stanford for one more chance at a title. And hey, when you have Phillips and Yang and Thorbjornsen, why wouldn't you? But it's not just golf. No, he's also getting a master's degree. This guy is going to leave Stanford with at least 1 ring, 2 degrees, a lifetime worth of experiences. I mean, he's got it all. But just when you think he's too smart to be on the back of the range, that I would get confused or intimidated by his large vocabulary, that we wouldn't find a common ground, fear not. Because Henry Shimp, with everything that he has going for him, is also a golf podcaster. Yes, we spoke about his podcast, The Tie. Link is in the show notes of this episode. And hey, I was a guest on that podcast. You can listen to that one and many others. But before you do that, let's dig into this episode. As always, if you like this podcast, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with strangers. Make sure you're subscribed in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Every episode is available on the website, thebackoftherange.com. And you know the drill. We're on social media as well. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram is where a lot of the photos and videos that I captured throughout the season will be posted. So make sure you go check that out. Let's get to this episode. Henry, welcome to the Back of the Range. How are you?
I'm good, Ben. Appreciate you having me on. Excited to talk tonight.
Yeah, man. We've been trying to get this done for quite some time, and I'm glad we're able to finally catch up and talk a lot. We got a lot to cover. I mean, we have Stanford to cover. We have your own golf podcast to cover. This is the back end of a home and home. I was your guest on The Tie, which is your golf podcast. We will talk about that a little bit later. But I have to ask, what has the blowback been since you had me on your podcast? Did it survive? Do you still have listeners? What's been the result of my presence on your podcast?
Oh, I mean, I can hardly go out in public anymore.
I understand.
I guess podcasting is a voice medium, but I walk around and people hear me talking, and I think bringing you on just brought so many ears to The Tie. I mean, millions and millions of downloads on that episode. And so it's been tough, but it's lonely at the top. So at least I have you to enjoy that with.
I can just imagine what it's been like for you. Probably can't even go on campus right now, can you? I mean, you're the face of Stanford golf right now.
Well, on campus, I'm safe because you have to wear a mask still. And so
I understand.
I can go out there and I can not speak and be anonymous a little bit, but yeah, it's a little tough.
I understand. Well, you'll get through it. The wave will crash soon enough. You'll have many other guests on there, and they will take the limelight. I do appreciate you giving me the title of the king, amateur golf's king of content. That's going to stick for at least another half hour, I think. So. You mentioned, I was kind of joking there about the face of Stanford golf. Is it fair to say that Rose Zhang is the face of Stanford golf right now?
I think that is extremely fair.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Rose is on a heater, to say the least. So I think that is extremely fair.
Stanford women have won their first 3 tournaments of the season. Rose has won the individual titles at those 3 tournaments. I know you guys spend a lot of time out at the farm. I know that that beautiful practice facility that I've still yet to get to, but I know that it is a very popular place. I've asked this question many times, but what is the dynamic between the men's and the women's team at Stanford? Are there a lot of games? What is your kind of front row seat to this right now?
It's a good question. As you already touched on, I definitely am on the older side of things. And so
yes.
I guess seeing as I didn't play junior golf with some of the girls, I don't know them quite as well as I have some of the ones, 2-3 years ago.
Sure.
So I can't answer the question quite as well as I would have been able to in kind of 2017, 18, 19. But nonetheless, I would say that it's always been a great relationship. We'll get out on course sometimes for actual team practices and have matches, and I've had tons of friends on the women's team over the year. I mean, a few of my very closest friends are people that have played on the women's team, and so we would always get out after practice and go play a few holes, have putting contests, all those sorts of things. And we share the same building for our locker rooms. Theirs is on one side, ours is on the other, and so we're always kind of mingling with them and just having a good time. So yeah, I would say that the 2 teams are very close, and it really does to some degree almost feel like one massive team. And
sure,
it's so fun to have, especially a year like this where both teams are off to a good start, them a little bit more so than us. But year over year, we do usually have 2 quite successful teams, and so kind of being able to push each other is really exciting. And I mean, I don't know how many trophies they've hauled in over my time here. Luckily, we've had a couple as well, but it's not quite to the level that the women's team has been at. And so, that's always a little added motivation to try to not let one side of the clubhouse fill up the trophy case too fast.
Well, you guys, like you said, you are having a great fall. I was there at Colonial when you guys picked up the team win, had a fantastic final round. I think you finished third, tied for third, somewhere in that neighborhood. But yeah, you and Phillips and Thor just, had a really great finish on that last day to kind of, chase down some of the other teams and get that team title. Most of the people in college golf that I'm talking to right now are kind of shutting it down. The fall season is coming to a close, but you guys have one more tournament. We're talking just at the early parts of November right now, and you have to, well, when I say you get to go to Pebble Beach to play in the St. Mary's Invitational. So let's just get you on the bad side of every listener right now, because while they're waiting for snow to arrive and they're putting the clubs away, you're going to go to Pebble Beach. Obviously, you're looking forward to this, finishing the fall strong, but let's kind of look at your entire career. Can you maybe just throw out there one of the experiences you've been able to have at Stanford as far as, there's tons of experiences, but as far as a golf course, a golf experience that is bucket list for anyone else, and for you it's just maybe another just date on the calendar, or an outing with an something golf related that people would be like, oh my gosh, really, this kid gets to do that?
I'm trying to decide how much I should make people dislike me here.
I'll build you back up later, so you can dig a hole. I'll build you back up later. By the end, everyone's going to love you. Don't worry about it.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll dig a hole and then I'll dig a tunnel through it.
Okay, perfect.
So in 2019, fall of 2019, we hosted a match play event, which we do kind of every 4-ish years at Cypress Point. So kind of sticking on the Pebble Beach thread here.
Why not?
And so it was practice round, and we each had our own caddy, which is obviously pretty neat. So
sure.
Went out in a practice round in 2 balls with a teammate, each with a caddy, and then we played foursomes the first round, four ball, I believe, the first round, and then a foursomes match for the second round, and then singles the final day. So I think, safe to say that's a pretty neat experience. Jim Nance was our guest speaker at the host dinner.
Oh my gosh! Did you get to go to his house? Did you get to his house to see that replica par 3 he has?
I have been there. It was not for that event, but I have seen that. It's pretty neat. Yeah,
multiple trips
cool.
To Jim Nance's house. Okay, I'm not sure how much I can admit.
No. So we, I just keep on going. But no, we didn't go for that. But I have gotten the chance to see that before. It's pretty neat. But I actually didn't realize going into that, Jim. I'm gonna get it wrong here, but his parents still live in Charlotte, which is where I'm from, Charlotte, North Carolina, and I do believe he spent some time there, actually living there, and so we were able to connect over that pretty quickly, which was neat. And so getting to talk to him is a bit surreal. But so that's the hole. Now the tunnel, to go even deeper into the hole. We because you did say a golf course that most people would just fantasize about. That for us is just kind of another day. We had a qualifying round at Cypress once again this year. And look, if I ever get to a point where I'm not excited about playing Cypress, then it's definitely time to hang the sticks up. But the excitement, the third or fourth time through is maybe slightly less than it is the first time. And so, being able to host that event there and then go back for qualifying rounds. I mean, we definitely get to do some pretty neat things. And fortunately, I would say that of all the guys that I've been on the team with, the current group certainly notwithstanding rather, everyone's very thankful for all of that. And we recognize kind of how lucky we are to be able to do some of those things. So a lot of cool experiences without a doubt.
Yeah, we're gonna dig you out of that hole. It's gonna take some time, but I'm confident we can do that. But that's just something that that is very unique and special with a lot, not just Stanford, but a lot of the big programs in the country. The places that you guys get to go and the things you get to experience. It's once in a lifetime. You mentioned Charlotte, North Carolina. Can't look past where you started, and also kind of interested to learn how you go from a solid junior career in Charlotte, picking up a couple state junior titles, and then make your way across the country all the way to Stanford. So we'll get into that in a minute. But as you know, as someone that does listen to the Back of the Range, tell me how you get into the game of golf.
Yeah, I didn't start all that young relative to at least people that play college golf. I think a lot of guys say that they start at 2, 3, 4. Maybe the classic quote would be I can't remember not playing or something along those lines. But I started playing closer to, I believe it was around 9 or 10. I played a lot of baseball growing up, and that was really my first sport that I was actually pretty decent at.
Sure.
And then started to play golf as well alongside baseball. And it got to where the two conflict really more. I mean, people talk about the swings and, being on different planes and how that's difficult. I never really struggled with that, but the seasons are the same. And so it got to where when I was in high school, both were in the spring, and you kind of had to choose between the two. You can't really pursue things at a high level if the high school season is the same. And so I just liked the individuality of golf. I didn't have to rely on anyone else. This is, as trite as it comes, but didn't have to rely on teammates. If I played well, it was on me. If I played badly, it was on me. I was able to make my own decisions. And, that's what really drew me to the game. And so, I guess starting out with my dad, he's the one that got me into the game, and his dad got him into it. And so just kind of a family thing. And I started to enjoy it, and he got to where he figured he should maybe try to get me in a few tournaments and just see how I enjoyed that. And that's when it really got exciting. I've always been super passionate about tournamented golf. It's just something that I love to do, love to see how well I can do, how many people I can go compete with. And so once I started really competing around 12 or 13, something like that,
right,
had a pretty good sense that I was probably going to keep playing for a while.
So you play junior golf. You're obviously it's not just a hobby. You're giving up things. You're making sacrifices, and you're making sacrifices to get yourself better. You like competition, and as we discuss that very often here at the Back of the Range, it comes time where okay, where, can I play in college? Am I good enough to do it? And you obviously are. You're playing at Stanford. Have had a great career there. But I'm always fascinated about, I'm fascinated by the decisions that are made and where it takes that player. And going from Charlotte, and I'm hoping that I'm on pretty solid ground here. But your junior accolades and your achievements don't scream out, okay, this kid is destined to go to one of the top programs in the country. He's either going to go to Stanford or he's going to Oklahoma State, or Oklahoma. I mean, good career in the junior ranks, but not like, okay, this is a blue chipper that is immediately going, right up the ladder. So, and then there's also the fact of Stanford is incredibly challenging academically. So I'm just curious, how did Stanford come into play, and what decisions were weighed, or what factors were weighed before you made that decision?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right that I was far from a blue chipper. I mean, I was a solid junior player. I think I had a good on course persona. I was a good student. I was a pretty good prospect just as a full package, but just going straight off of resume and scoring average, certainly, nothing to write home about necessarily. But I looked at a bunch of ACC schools a little bit when I was earlier in high school at the Ivy League. I knew I wanted to go somewhere strong academically, but decided I wanted to play at a little bit higher level than that. But really got to where I guess it was probably about October of my sophomore year. I had looked at all of the kind of the ACC schools that I wanted to, and was getting very close to just pulling the trigger on that, and not even looking anywhere else. And my dad actually pushed me to reach out to Coach Ray and maybe see if there was going to be any sort of opportunity at Stanford. And I was pleased early on with the feedback that I got from Coach Ray. He seemed to be interested. He liked kind of some of the softer things that I mentioned, just the way that I handled myself and the way that we connected over the phone and whatnot, and my academic profile. But I remember him saying that, hey, we're kind of recruiting one, maybe two guys. And one of the guys that we're looking at right now is this kid named Ryan Ruffles. I don't know if you know that name, but he's from Australia, ended up turning pro actually. But I mean, he was probably, I don't know, 7 shots around better than me at that point. I mean, just not even close. And so I was kind of like, all right, this is cool. I'll go take a visit, because he said he wants me to come out, but really didn't think that there was much prospect there. And then all in the course of like 1 week, honestly, I remember popping a really nice ACT score. I took a visit that went well. There was a guy that dropped off the team at Stanford, and Ryan Ruffles decided to turn pro. And so all of a sudden I kind of improved my lie, as well as one guy, maybe two, ended up being 2 guys, maybe 3. And the one guy that I really thought was definitely going to take one of those spots had turned pro. And so all of a sudden, what seemed like I was never going to have a chance at became very real. And that first visit happened in probably October. And then I took another one. It might have actually been my junior year, not sophomore, but one of the two. I ended up taking a second visit after that in January. And at that point, it was pretty clear that, if I wanted to, that I was going to have the opportunity to be on the team there at Stanford. And I was still, I thought it was awesome, but was just a bit overwhelmed, honestly, with the whole thing. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a homebody, really not at all. I love where I'm from. I love the East Coast, but would not call myself a homebody. But still, it was a lot. It was far away, and very, very different sort of group of people in a really good way. I think that was in some ways what drew me to the place. But I just struggled a little bit at age 16 or 17 to kind of get my hands around just how incredible it is. I think that was almost the big thing. Is you alluded earlier to our practice facility, which we will absolutely get you to eventually. But there's just so much going on that it feels like a lot to handle. And I remember my dad just having kind of a stern talk with me of sorts of like, hey, I don't care how overwhelmed you are. Like, I think you just need to go ahead and do this, and when he said that, I was like, okay, I guess I should think a little bit harder about this. And after really kind of putting some thought in, it only took me a few days to decide that you can't really go wrong making that decision to go to Stanford.
Right.
And, man, I'm glad that I did. And I'm very grateful that he gave me that little nudge to really take the decision seriously.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because that kind of hit upon this next topic. Well, not the next topic, but just as a follow up. Like you said, you're making this massive decision at 16, and you mentioned your dad. I've met both your parents at other, I think USAM. Met your mom at Colonial. I don't know them very well. Seem like great people, but I'm thinking about what parent at that moment is not going to say to their kid, you got to go to Stanford, because they're thinking, look, I'm sure my son or my daughter wants to be a big star on the PGA or LPGA tour and have the trophies and the endorsements and all that stuff. But you got to kind of, play the percentages. It may or may not happen, but to get an education at Stanford, oh my gosh, this is a no-brainer. So and I guess by you mentioning it, your dad kind of said, look, is that basically what you're saying? Look, you got to do this, or did they kind of help you make the decision for yourself?
Yeah, I would definitely say the latter.
Okay.
It was certainly going to be my decision 100%. They were never going to push me to go one place or the other. But the part where it does get a little bit more interesting is, I mentioned, I won't say the school verbatim, but I mentioned that I was looking at a handful of other ACC schools, and
sure,
there was one in particular that I had always been super interested in, which happened to be my dad's alma mater. And
okay.
that's where I always really wanted to go. Had a good opportunity. I really did like everything there. And I mean, I vividly remember when we had that conversation of him telling me, hey, I really think you should be serious about going to Stanford. I was sitting there going into that conversation thinking, like, I really want to go to the other school. And, I think he would be completely cool with that, right?
Right.
He's a big fan.
Following his footsteps. Sure.
But yeah, he kind of nudged me to say, you know what, that's a great opportunity, but I think that there could be one that's a little bit better. And so, yeah, I think Coach Ray certainly has my dad to thank to some degree for me ending up on the farm.
Well, you make it out to Stanford, and I had your two teammates from the 2019, or two of your teammates from the 2019 National Championship team. I had Brandon and Isaiah on the back of the range way back when, and I remember a lot of things about that episode. I hadn't re-listened to it to prepare for this one, but I do remember quite a few things. And one of the things I remembered was, I think both of them at the time were majoring in science, technology, and society, or I think that's what it was, which is your one of your majors. And I just was like, I don't even know what that means. I mean, I know what those three words are. I don't know what this major means. How as a freshman do you even navigate? Okay, how the golf will take care of itself. Okay, I understand that, but how do you navigate academics at Stanford coming in as a freshman?
Yeah, I would say that it's not that bad. There are a handful of classes that you have to take. So a couple sort of freshman writing classes and, things of that nature. And then beyond that, I think it kind of goes one of two ways. Either, you want to do something reasonably technical. So STS would fall more or less under that category. Maybe economics, what my master's is in, management science and engineering, computer science, all of those majors, you're going to take the same kind of 3, 4, 5 things as a freshman. And so if you think you're going to go the technical route, which most people probably have a pretty decent sense if that's going to be them, you're going to take just a certain set of classes in that first year, or at least the first couple quarters. If you think that you're probably not going to do that, then you're going to skip those classes because a couple of them are not a whole lot of fun. And so,
yeah,
to throw a couple of the names out there, CS 106A, that's kind of the first computer science class you're probably going to take. Math 51, the bane of every freshman's existence. You either are going to take those or you are going to avoid them at all costs. And so that's kind of how I would break down the way that people navigate it is if you think you're going to go technical, you're going to go ahead and go through with those things. And if you're not going to be technical, then you're just going to avoid them and take some stuff that is more fun and interesting.
Well, you and I have gone to college, I think, for almost the exact amount of years. You're in your 6th year at Stanford. I think I went to college for 7 years. We're not even going to talk about my academic achievements because, well, I'm a professional podcaster, so clearly it's worked out well. Your freshman year, golf-wise, excuse me, your freshman year. Obviously we can look at how many rounds you played. Not, it took you a while to kind of get your feet wet and kind of balance. And you're seeing freshmen that are coming in. Last year was Carl Phillips and Michael Thorbjornsen's first year. Obviously, COVID complicated a lot of things. But how did you maybe assist them or advise them as far as getting acclimated to Stanford, drawing on your experiences as a freshman?
Yeah, I think that with Carl in particular, there was a strange connection in the sense that, so my freshman year, I played our first tournament, which was at Colonial, funny enough, where we
Nice.
played a handful of weeks ago. And then I broke my wrist after that. And so I was out for, more or less the whole season. I don't recall really being able to play until like April in the spring. And so, I redshirted that year and, had a great time, had some great teammates and really did enjoy that freshman year. But from a golf standpoint, that year kind of became a wash. And so, Carl came in and was struggling with a little bit of an injury and just kind of trying to rehab it and get things back together. And so he and I were able to kind of connect on that front.
I think it was a finger injury he had, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. He had surgery and it just kind of nagged him for a little while. But fortunately, he's kind of going in the right direction with that at this point. And then, with Michael, this is funny, but I'm going to go for it anyway. Michael's girlfriend goes to Duke. I dated a girl for a while who went to Chapel Hill. We were able to connect over that.
There you go.
Going to a different school and navigating that, it's different. I mean, he's from the East Coast as well, and so just kind of some natural connections there of dealing with things from East Coast to West Coast, and living in an all new place. Trying to connect with your teammates. I think that's a big thing that's absolutely crucial. The guys that connect with the team early, you just have such a solid group to lean on, and guys that don't do as good of a job, not necessarily because people don't like them, but just maybe they don't make as much of an effort. You just don't kind of have that group to fall back on when school starts to get a little bit harder and you don't really know where to go for this class or that class. And
right.
So those are some of the big things, just kind of getting those guys on their feet, telling them which classes they should think about and which classes they should absolutely not think about, and trying to make things as easy as possible for them off the bat.
Well, I mean, you came back for this 6th year, and obviously you guys are having a great fall. Picked up that win at Colonial, like we talked about, and if there was ever a time for senior leadership, it's got to be this year. You have these freshmen coming in, or I know they're sophomores now, but it really kind of feels, I'm sure you'd agree, that this is kind of the first full, somewhat normal season that they've had. And I know that it's all in good fun, but how old do they make you feel sometimes?
There's some days where they make me feel really old. Yeah, no two ways about it. I was actually saying to a guy that I played with at Olympia Fields in our first event this year, who was also, he was maybe in his 5th year, but we were like the same age. I was like, some days I feel like we're the same age, me and some of the younger guys. It doesn't feel like we're that far apart at all.
Right.
And then I snap my fingers and they start talking about, like, I don't even know what they're talking about because it's that
right.
absurd, and how much older I am in some regards. And I feel like I'm like 40. They start talking about like trading cards or like iPhone games or something like that. And maybe I'm just a little too mature for my age as well, but nonetheless, there are times when yes, they definitely make me feel old. But
yeah, the things I've seen this fall traveling at collegiate golf tournaments and being close with some of the teams, and I'm just like, I can't even fathom being that age again. It just don't even, no thanks.
You throw on a Monday night football game when we're at a tournament, and we feel like we're all the exact same age. But
Right.
then the game goes off and they start playing video games, and I decide I'm going to like crack a book open.
Oh my God.
And that similar age, kind of widens by about 10 years. So
there you go. So I definitely want to talk a little bit more about, what's in store for this season. But as I mentioned, member of the 2019 national championship team, and I had Brandon and I had Isaiah on the podcast previously, but our episode was recorded, I believe, right around March or April of that spring season. So I went back and looked at that. I went back and looked at some of your tournaments, and the easy thing to do is look back and say, "Yep, you beat Texas in the final," and really the nucleus of that team was you and Brandon Wu and Isaiah Salinda. All three of you grabbed the 3 points needed to win, and there's the picture of you guys holding the trophy, and then we're all done. But I went back and looked at it, and the reason I wanted to go through this with you is not just for you to walk down memory lane, but also to kind of illustrate to people listening just how dynamic college golf can be, just how quickly things can change, and also, in my opinion, just how exciting collegiate golf can be if you really take a look at some things. So February 9th in 2019, Stanford finishes 13th out of 18 teams at the Ari Invitational in Hawaii. I don't even know how to pronounce that. I've given up trying, so if that's correct, then great. But anyway, the term in Hawaii, you finish 13th out of 18 teams. You finish as a team 2 over par. Oklahoma State wins that tournament at 47 under par. You lost by 49 shots.
That's sick.
Do you remember? Don't worry. The story, by the way, at the end,
vividly.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Okay.
I remember that.
But just so you know, at the end of this story, you end up winning the national championship. So don't worry. This is all going to end up fine. Okay. So you lose by 49, and although it's probably not a tremendously long flight home because you're in California, it's still from Hawaii to California, and you're flying back. Where is the team mentally at that point on February 9th on the flight home?
Yeah, not in the hottest of places. I will call out that a bunch of, now myself not being included, but a bunch of California guys going and playing in Hawaii. It's like super grainy Bermuda over there, and so I mean, what a fantastic trip. However, we just have never played well there. I think I've played it 3 times, and 13th is about as well as we've done, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
But I really do remember, now that you call that out, being there at the awards ceremony, and Oklahoma State won, and I'm pretty sure that Wolf won individually. Maybe someone else won it that year, but if he didn't win, he came in second, and maybe Hovland was up there as well. I mean, that. I think it's pretty easy to guess that those guys are probably at the top of the leaderboard. But,
sure.
I mean, they were, 15 under probably individually, and you said 47 under as a team. And I do remember standing there just thinking, like, what game were they playing this week? Or maybe better put, what game were we playing? Because the 69, the cute little 69 that I shot today that I felt kind of good about, is just like not even close to a good round relative to guys winning this thing. And so, yeah, that's a nice starting point to again, our little walk down memory lane, which I'm always happy to do, Ben. I can do this all day.
Perfect.
But,
Wolf won it.
Else.
Yeah, Wolf won it at 18. Boshu tied second at 15. Hovland 8th place at 11. Yeah. So those are the 3 studs that week. And then obviously you got Hayden Wood and oh, by the way, you got Eckroat, who, Eckroat is your 4 guys. So anyway, so so we're start there, and the messaging from Coach Ray, I mean, what does he say at that point? Because he sees that the season is kind of like, okay, we're going to have to kind of right the ship here or do something.
Yeah, I'll go back even further. And
okay.
I remember we had a really bad fall. And our last tournament was Georgia Tech, where we played 2 weeks ago and didn't have a good result there. I don't remember every event that we would have played, but we didn't play well in much of anything. And we worked really hard in the off season. I mean, we got after it workout wise, and continue to practice even after the season ended. Usually we wrap up kind of beginning of November. And from that point, it's kind of a, hey, guys will do their own thing. It's not like no one's going to practice, but more or less we'll see you in early January to really get back after it as a team.
Right.
And I remember the coaches and the guys on the team as well, just kind of agreeing, like, we're not going to do that. We're just going to keep practicing. Like, even if it's not, air quotes required,
right.
We're going to do team practice and just keep rolling. And so, we felt like we had worked pretty hard for it and showed up to our first tournament and played terribly. And I remember a speech after the first or second round from coach, kind of saying all those same things of like, look, you guys have worked for it. And at some point you just got to show up, because right now we are just flat out not showing up to play. And yeah, kind of from a team perspective, I recall us just taking the mindset that, the ball don't lie pretty much. At some point, if we keep working, then things are just going to fall our way. And as we kind of keep rolling here, we'll start to see that they did. But that was definitely a pretty dark place. You go from not playing well and then working really hard, thinking that you're going to right the ship, and, the ship really just kind of keeps taking a wrong turn. And, at some point that starts to work on you pretty hard.
Yeah. You go in right after that tournament, you go to the Prestige at PGA West, tied for 6th. Okay, we're starting to right the ship a little bit. Southern Highlands in Vegas, you come in 3rd, and that's the last tournament of the season that you did not win. So, you do go your home tournament, you win that one. Now, what's really interesting, though, is you'd think, okay, now that the tide's been turned, the team is solidified. You don't even have a consistent lineup other than you and Brandon and Isaiah. Your 4 and 5 guys obviously everyone's qualifying different spots. So one week maybe you're playing the 3, then maybe you're the 2, then the 4. But for this conversation, you and Brandon or Isaiah pretty much played the entire spring, and then you have a different lineup for the Prestige, for Southern Highlands, for the Goodwin. I think for the Western Intercollegiate. I'm pretty sure that may have been the first that may have solidified with Snyder and Dollette as the 4 and 5 guys. But you actually spent that entire spring not only trying to find your games, but also trying to find a lineup. How is that distracting, or how challenging is that when you're still going through qualifying all the time?
Yeah, it certainly can be. I mean, I think that things shape up pretty nicely for us in that with the spring, in that we get enough of a body of work for everybody out of the tournament rounds, where everybody gets to play in Palm Springs, everyone gets to play at the Goodwin, and then usually at the Western, it's always 6 people that play, and we might even get a couple individuals, which I believe that year we did. And so, between those 3 tournaments, at a minimum, call it 8 guys are going to get out there. And so you don't have to lean as much on just kind of the random, like, hey, go play Friday, Sunday out at Stanford.
Got
and
it. Okay.
See what happens. You get to actually go out in tournaments. And at that point, at least everyone on the team kind of gets the sense of, all right, well, if this guy beats me in a tournament, then he probably is just playing better.
Right.
He should be playing. And, Snyder really started playing great then. He plays Stanford really well. Postiempo is a great course for him. I mean, that guy's short game is just an absolute joke. His short game and putting, I don't know if you've ever seen him play.
I haven't.
But I truly don't think there's anyone else. If I had to make an up and down, I mean, I cannot think of anyone else, at least that I've been around, that I would want to put in more than him. And so he started to play really well around the Goodwin and then the Western Intercollegiate. And then we host regionals at Stanford. He played great there as well. And Dollette really just kind of became a model of consistency for us. I think that's what we ended up looking for out of that 5 spot is just someone that we know can kind of play pretty solid every single day. You don't have to be great. You just kind of need that upper bound to be not too high. And the real magic there, as you talk about finding a lineup, is you need to have a 4 and 5 guy, maybe that aren't shooting 66s, but that can play solidly enough to where your 1, 2, and 3 players start to feel as if, okay, well, if I do get off to a bad start and I'm 4 over through 7 holes or something like that, I don't have to panic because my 4 and 5 guy are going to play just fine. And so that frees you up to then say, all right, well, I'm just going to get after it and see if I can get it back to even or under par. And if I don't, then that guy's going to have my back. But it's when you're kind of playing and thinking, well, the 5 guy might shoot 80 anyway. And so I don't really know if I get after it here and try to make some birdies, if that's going to really cost us a ton of shots. That's where it starts to get complex. And so being able to piece together that lineup where particularly Wu and Isaiah, myself kind of falling in the middle of being a solid player that can throw in some good rounds as well, but particularly for those guys who had just such hot springs,
right?
I think piecing together those 4 and 5 players that they knew they could rely on to just be solid at the worst day to day is what really unlocked their games, and then the team as well, because, you know, it all starts to snowball. Once those guys start to feel confident, that makes everyone else feel more confident. The whole thing just becomes really fun. It becomes pretty addicting. And so that's kind of the real magic in my mind of piecing together that 5-man lineup, is the way that it makes people feel out on the golf course more so than just looking at the scores in and of themselves.
Now, you and I are talking about this mindset of thinking, okay, I'm a 1 or 2 or 3 player, and you know, I'm running into trouble, but that's okay. I got a 5-man behind me. And this kind of falls into just another topic of how much are you thinking about this, or how much is Coach Ray communicating this to you during a round? Because that's what's kind of unique about college golf. You know, it's 5 guys play, the top 4 scores count. Is that being communicated to you during a round where, you know, coach is saying, hey, listen, you're 4 over with 4 to play. You know, I really need a 75 out of you because, you know, the 5 guy is 8 over, or, look, you know, we have the 75 locked up. So if you want to, you know, turn it loose and see if you can get us a 73, go for it. If you don't, then it's okay. We got it covered. Are those conversations happening on the golf course with you and Coach Ray, or maybe not during that stretch, but do you recall any time that kind of a conversation is happening?
You know, not on a consistent basis, but they certainly do. I mean, I've absolutely been told kind of through the last 4 or 5 holes, like, you know, you can really only help us. Usually it comes more from that standpoint of you're on the 15th hole and you're the last guy out. You're 1 over par. You've got 3 guys who are 3 under. Okay, they're going to count. And then your next guy's at even. And, you know, it's not just a full unlock to just let it rip, because that guy at even could maybe make a double or something like that. But for the most part, the mindset then becomes, hey, the best thing that happens here is you can make 2-3 birdies and get to 1 or 2 under, and then you cut that guy. And if you shoot even par or 1 over, then let's just hope that he doesn't back up, and so you're not going to help us anyway. So yeah, that stuff has certainly happened, but I would not say on a consistent basis that I'm constantly being told, this is exactly kind of where things sit with the rest of the team.
Okay. Yeah. I was curious because, like I said, it's such a unique aspect of college golf. And, you know, I'm very fascinated with how those conversations occur out on the golf course, because when you're playing an individual event, you know, when you're playing a USAM, you're playing, you know, that obviously is out the window. Those things aren't happening. So
yeah, I think it's individual to the player as well. I mean, some guys want to know that stuff,
right?
Though, I mean, for better or for worse, I think that you'll see some subplots of guys might you know, have a bet on a given day, just like, hey, I want to go see if I can beat you out there, and so they might be thinking about, am I in a good spot to beat one of my teammates on a given day, and so they just really enjoy tracking the scores, and it's the same as leaderboard watching out on tour. You know, certain players really want to know where they sit relative to others, and some guys want to just go out and play their hardest. That's always where I've been. Like, I don't really want to know where anyone else sits for the most part. I kind of just want to play my game. I don't think that positively it's gonna make any effect on my game to know where other guys sit. You can very much sense it at the end of the day, to be honest with you. Like, when I connect with coach out on, let's say I'm on the 13th hole and I see him in the fairway, I can tell if we're having a really good day or a really bad day or something kind of in between. And it's not really going to change a whole lot for me to say, okay, so how good is this day, or how bad is this day, or how average is this day? I just want to kind of say, look, I'm even through 13. I'd love to get to 2 or 3 under, and I'm just going to try to do that regardless of where things sit, because just shooting the lowest score that I can day to day, that's the best way that you can help the team.
Yeah, no, 100%. You guys win, you guys win at the Western. Isaiah gets his first and only collegiate win. Then you go into Pac-12s, you win that, you win regionals, and now you're at the blessing for the national championship. And you guys are really, other than Oklahoma State, you guys are really one of the hottest teams, obviously, in the country. And you play that way, and you go through the first 3 rounds. I think you guys are probably in second place on a stroke play. Oklahoma State's going nuts again. They end up winning stroke play by 30. And then you guys have your 4th round. And I think I know that Brandon shoots 81. I think you shoot 80. I think there's another 80 in there somewhere. I mean, it for all the great things that were done in the first 3 rounds of this national championship, because you got to get to the top 8. So you go to match play, you got to get there. I think you guys pretty much had it locked up after the first 3 rounds, but then really things fall apart. You still get in, but I'm guessing this is not the way you wanted to go into match play. Much like conversations that you've had with Coach, after the tournament in Hawaii. Do you recall the conversation that was had at the end of the 4th round?
I do. Yeah, that was not a fun experience. I mean, we went from pretty much having it in the bag, as you say, to it being nerve-wracking. I mean, that was the only time in my career that I really remember the feeling of, I really, really hope that I'm not a counting score today.
Right.
Because I got off to a tough start. I had a bad front 9. I think I took 23 putts or so. I 3-putted 5 times on front 9, if I remember correctly. And I just remember turning thinking, I really, really hope that I'm 4 shots worse than everyone else on the team. And the first time I saw a leaderboard was maybe on the 12th, and I recognized that everyone else was pretty much playing as badly as I was, and that it was not a guarantee that we were going to even get into match play at that point. But fortunately we did. We kind of righted the ship to some degree coming down the stretch there, and we're able to hold on and grab I don't know if we were 6 or 7, but
6.
I did the 6 seed. Yeah. I do remember Coach I think he kind of chalked it up to, hey, you're probably going to have a bad day on this golf course. And this was ours, so now we can just kind of let it rip. My thoughts personally, I remember us just talking all year about how cool would it be to make it to match play. And 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th, we're in match play. And so I saw no reason to be frustrated with how the last round went, or where things sat at that point, whether we were the 2 seed or the 6 seed. As we all know, in any sport, when you get to a match play format, absolutely anything can happen. We didn't have Oklahoma State because no one wanted them in the first round of match play, or any round of match play for that matter. And so I just remember being so fired up, regardless of how that last round went, just to have a chance at it, because I truly believe that anyone has a chance once you get to match play. I mean, that's been proven time and time again, not just in golf, but anything else. And so it was, for me, just kind of a euphoric feeling, really, that, hey, it wasn't easy, but we got through, and now we have an opportunity. Let's go do something with it.
Yeah, I remember a lot about that championship, and I just remember looking at these matches and how they, how everything kind of played out. I still remember, I don't know if you were physically there or saw it happen live, but I'll never forget watching, Boshu horseshoe that putt to lose to Texas. And then obviously you faced Texas in the final. You had to get through Vandy in the semifinals. You kind of got dealt a pretty tough hand. You had Augenstein in the semis. You had Alex Fitzpatrick in the quarters from Wake. And then you have Sussman in the final, but you and Isaiah and Wu delivered the 3 points needed. All 3 sessions you win 3-2. It really just doesn't get any closer than that. I mean, it has to be the highlight of your collegiate career, and especially us going through. And I appreciate you just kind of sharing some of the moments of that spring, because I mean, to get to where you were from where it started, and then also just all the things going right, but all the fluctuations of the lineups and just everything that kind of came through. You have to look back at, I mean, you're still on that team, you're still there at Stanford, but, and also, it has to feel like a little bit ages ago because of COVID. There's just so many different things that are coming into play. But looking back on that, the accomplishment has to be like, oh, okay, wow, we really did that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and what I really take from it at this point, being the old guy that's able to reminisce on things a little bit, is that, good golf is really never that far away. If you're willing to work at it just a little bit harder. I mean, it wasn't that long as you kind of went through the timeline there. There was not that much time in between when we were finishing 13th at the Amor to when we went to Vegas, and we didn't win that week, but we made a really good run at it. Kind of had a few bad holes down the stretch, but that was a national championship quality field, and we finished third. And to be completely honest with you, it did not feel much different at all. We kind of just got things rolling a little bit the first round. I remember shooting 4 or 5 under on a pretty hard golf course out in Vegas. And yeah, I played a great round, but 4 or 5 under is not that different than 1 or 2 under. You make another couple putts and all of a sudden you have a good day. A couple teammates do the same thing. Wow, we've been finishing 10th every week, and now we're second on the leaderboard. And
yeah,
that's kind of all there is to it. And once you kind of start to feel that, it really can become rather contagious in a team environment. And so that's what I really take away from it, is that, anytime things aren't going great, if you just stay confident and kind of lean into that team environment, then some pretty cool things can start to happen. And, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on what went on with us last spring. We had an unfortunate situation with some of the COVID policies out here at Stanford and didn't get a chance to go to the national championship. But on a more positive note, with last spring, we kind of struggled to get things going. We started super late, again, going to some of the COVID policies out here. We didn't get going until the end of February and struggled to get our feet under us. But, that was my message, especially as, you talk about Carl and Michael, some of the younger players going through the spring, is that one team day, one round where all of a sudden, rather than it just being a few pedestrian 71s and you shoot 4 or 5 under, when you have that day where 3 or 4 guys go shoot 66, it feels a little bit different. And we can all shoot 66. We know that. And if you put them together on the same day, there you go. That's a really big team day. And we did that in the final round of the Pac-12 championship. And I mean, it is very tangible, that sort of energy that happens as a team. So anyway, I'm kind of going on a tangent.
No,
now,
you're
but
good. You're good.
That's the real recollection from that spring, is that, one day, if you kind of keep that mentality, can really make you ride the high and take you to places that seem really far away. But once again, it's not that hard.
Now, I had another thing I wanted to ask you, and this is not because of Stanford's challenging academics. This is something that maybe people that follow collegiate golf don't take into consideration. You obviously have to shoot the scores. There's a lot of travel. There's a lot of, you guys being out in California, you're crossing a lot of time zones. Your sleep gets messed up. You got to figure out a way to be healthy. You got to figure, there's a lot of things that go into it. How much of a concerted effort do your teammates kind of keep everyone in check on keeping academics and all those responsibilities up to par? I hate that pun, but like, how important is it to make sure no one's falling behind academically? Because not just staying, eligible. I don't mean that. I mean, not allowing someone to fall, back on their schoolwork to the point where, they're trying to play a good round, but they know they have 2 papers due the next day or something like that. Is that in the culture of the program?
It definitely is. I mean, we've never really had a lot of issues, as you kind of alluded to there, with like eligibility stuff. But
right.
It's a very real thing that when we go on the road, like we have to do a lot of work, and especially as you get deeper into the quarters, you're going to have some week 7s, week 8s where you might have a paper or 2 papers or a big piece set. And that work can become that much more difficult when you're just sitting by yourself in a hotel room, and you don't have the ability to go to office hours and connect with any TAs or anything like that. And so, if you push off a really hard piece set deep into a week, and then you have to travel, you're in a pretty tough spot. And so it's definitely a very real thing that when we know we're getting ready to leave on a weekend, like I'll start to ask guys like, hey, where's your schoolwork at? Do you have papers this week? Do you have piece sets? And
what's a piece? What's a piece set? I'm sorry. It's been so long, Henry, since I've been at Stanford. So I don't recall that when I was there, studying basket weaving. So what's a piece set?
It's a problem set. So in technical classes, they refer to your homework assignments just as problem sets, or affectionately dubbed as piece sets.
Gotcha.
But anyway, it's something that we'll start to cover kind of early in the week of, going around the horn and saying, hey, do you have things squared away? And someone kind of brushes it off. It's like, hey, no, seriously, do you have it squared away? Because I have seen more than a few guys have to stay up until 1, 2, 3 a.m. wrapping up work before the final round of an important event. And so that to me is the big thing is when you're getting ready to travel. Sometimes like we'll be 5 days out from a tournament and maybe my practice levels are slightly down, and coach will give me a little nudge of, hey, why haven't you been out here? It's like, hey, because I really don't want to be doing 12, 15 hours of schoolwork on the road this week. I would much rather go ahead and get that taken care of and practice as we get, into those last few days before the tournament, and be able to really just have my mind and everything focused on golf when we're actually there.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, and that we found our way into this topic, because it's something that not just collegiate players that listen to this podcast, parents that listen to it, juniors. I think juniors would take a big lesson. I hope you're taking a big lesson away from what Henry just said, because this is a guy that has won a national championship. This guy plays at one of the premier programs in the country, and is just as important as it is to get into the gym or, work on wedges and, check your numbers on TrackMan, all that golf stuff. Yes, very important. But I'm sure you can think back to over your entire career, tournaments or rounds that you clearly know that guy probably didn't play his best because there were other things off the golf course that took time away and took his mind away from it.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that a lot of the time, especially in amateur events over the summer, like that'll kind of be my goal going into the weeks. And I know at that point you're not dealing with schoolwork, so it might be not the greatest of sidebars, but just I feel as if when I can take care of things off the golf course, sleep nicely and stretch properly, try to eat the right way. If I can get myself physically, mentally in the best spot to just be able to go out on course and have it feel as simple as possible and not have any sort of wrenches thrown into the situation, that's what makes me play my best. The practice and all that stuff, like you take care of that or you don't. And at that point you get to a tournament, and the amount that you've practiced, that's not going to change. That's not something you can control by the time you tee it up. But what you can control is, did you really get to bed at the right time last night? Did you eat breakfast? Did you eat the proper breakfast? Did you stretch before the round? Did your warm up go decently? Did you, allot enough time for all of that? And it becomes that much more complex at the collegiate level when you have schoolwork thrown into that situation and other things as well. And so, yeah, that's the biggest thing for me. Tournament weeks is like, just do the little stuff. We do a lot of work going into it. We invest a lot of resources to try to play well, as do all other schools. And there's a lot that goes into it. And so the last thing you want to do is get to a tournament week and not kind of clear those last few hurdles that are really going to determine whether or not you play well or not.
There's a lot more than just hitting the ball, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt. That's at the end of the day, and especially when you get far enough into it, hitting the ball is maybe the easiest part of it all, to be honest with you.
Interesting. So you came back for your final year. What went into that decision? I mean, you've won a national championship, from someone on the outside looking in, what else do you really have to accomplish? if you have professional aspirations, you might as well, rip the Band-Aid off and just jump in and get started. What led to your decision to come back to Stanford for another season?
Yeah, as you put it, at face value, it does seem a little bit odd, but the deeper conversation around is I've really only played 2 real seasons of college golf. My freshman year, we touched on earlier, I was injured for essentially the whole thing. Sophomore year, normal year, everything square. Junior year obviously went really nicely. That was the year that we won the national championship. And then senior year, come back, played 8 events or something like that before getting sent home for COVID, and felt like our team was really kind of starting to go in the right direction. We had a big week at Cabo, which was the final event before the whole pandemic hit. We were kind of having a similar sort of story to 2019, where slow fall, slow start to the spring. And then I remember in Cabo, us getting up close to the leaderboard, or to the top of the leaderboard, and a really tough field. And then, of course, we all get sent home and never be heard of again. And then whatever last year was, timeline gets a little bit tough at this point, 2020, 2021. We only played like 5 events. And so I knew all along that I was going to do 5 because I had that red shirt year, my freshman year. And so staying 5, doing a master's program, that was in my plans all the way through. The 6th year only became an affordance of the pandemic. And at first, I really didn't think that it was going to be something that I have a whole lot of interest in. But, with the way that our season ended last year, I got to a point where I hemmed and hawed on it for quite a while, and really came to where I didn't think that I had to leave just because it had been, this many years.
Right.
You kind of go through the thinking of, hey, you can't stay this long. At some point you got to get on with it. And you've had some strange things happen with COVID, and we had a strange ending to our year last year. And my mindset for a while was, that's just the rub of the green, and it's unfortunate that your career has to end in a funny way, but it is what it is. And then I remember having a conversation with Coach Ray when he was just like, it's actually pretty simple. You actually don't have to end your career that way. Like, you do have this extra year, and there really, at the end of the day, is absolutely nothing wrong with you using it. I think, or at least I hope that most of my teammates and coaches are pleased to still have me around. And so I got to the point where I felt like I was still really enjoying being around everybody, and was able to add value, and still am able to add value to the team. And have just had a blast doing it. And so I'm very pleased with the decision that I've made, and that I had the opportunity to do so.
And I'm guessing that Coach likes the fact that there's another person that's old enough to rent a van.
Not quite. I can't quite get a rental car. I'm not 25.
Okay. All right. Well, you're
no. We still have about a year to go.
Okay. All right.
But I mean, a sidebar from that, I do feel like I'm probably.
Oh, I know where you're going with this. I think I know where you're going with this, but you go ahead.
I think I'm 65. No. Let's say 65% player, 35% coach.
Okay.
I'd be very interested to hear what Coach Ray has to say about that.
Well,
maybe it's more like 75-25. I'm flattering myself, but
well, just you bringing up the fact that you're checking up on the guys to make sure they got their schoolwork done. I mean, that's a big thing for a leader to do. I mean, that's a thing where, look, at that age, for you to go to one of the guys in the team and say, okay, I need to know right now, are you ready to go? This is the same thing about asking someone, hey, are you injured or are you hurt? Can you play? Be honest with me. Oh, you don't have your schoolwork squared away? That's going to be a problem for us. And I think it's a really, you have to have a good, solid communication structure within the team to be able to call someone out and say, look, dude, you're hurting yourself and you're hurting the team if you show up at this tournament and you have things on your mind. I just think that's a huge thing. I don't think I've ever touched on that before on an episode. I'm glad I did, because that's just when you wonder why a player has a good week one week and then just doesn't show up the following week, there's all these different, it's a different course, and you didn't putt well. But you also got to remember you have classwork you got to take care of too.
Yeah. Well, and on that end, kind of sticking with the conversation of why would you have come back for a sixth year? I think that sort of line of thinking went into it as well. I mean, I'm super passionate about being a leader and trying to hone my skills in leadership and be around this group of players that's so talented. And it does put an amount of pressure on me that I really appreciate and enjoy, in that, I have to show up. Golf is what it is. I hope I show up most every week and play pretty well. But, from just kind of a checking the boxes and being on point and dealing with my business the way that you need to for everybody to play well, like I can't miss. I kind of have to show up
Right.
to whatever outing it is. When you're a younger guy on the team, like you get a little bit of grace here and there if you didn't, get to bed until 4 a.m. before a workout or whatever it is, you're not on point for practice one day. But in my position, like I can't miss on those ends. I got to show up and be very much on point every single day and set the standard for everybody else. And so, yeah, sure, that comes with an amount of pressure. But that's what I was kind of signing up for. And I enjoy that. And I hope that other guys learn a little bit from it, because I very much enjoy kind of the lead by example sort of mentality.
You're getting ready to do a very similar schedule in the spring as you did in the national championship run. You're going to go back to you're going to go play the Bermuda Greens in Hawaii in February again, and you'll be at the Prestige. You'll go to Cabo. I mean, a lot of the same tournaments. Obviously, not going to be hosting a conference this year, but you're going to have a lot of these same tournaments. What's the career's going to come to an end. What's one of the spots? And you can't say Cyprus again. Don't say that. We've done that. What's one thing you're going to miss the most about college golf?
That word Cabo is sticking with me. That's for sure. No, it's a heck of a tournament. But I think at the end of the day, it does just come down to being around the team, being with the coaches. The trips are so fun. All the team dinners that we get to do, and I've gotten to a point where I really do appreciate the practices that kind of suck. And when you have to show up to a workout and that you're going to be ripping some cardio at the end and it kind of sucks, like the rest of your life, you're going to do that stuff as well, but you probably are going to do it by yourself, and it's just not going to be quite as much fun. Like we had a practice today where I didn't finish the whole thing. It was kind of a progression, and depending on how well you do, you may or may not really finish it in the 2.5 hours that we were allotted to do so. It got really windy out there. It started raining. Like, it's not super fun, but at face value. But that's the piece of it that you have to kind of come to enjoy, is the fact that you're doing it with a group of guys that you enjoy being around, and just embracing the difficulty of it all is not only how you get better, but that's the part of it that I'm going to miss, is some of the challenges just become, rather than a challenge, they just become something that's super enjoyable.
I don't think I've ever asked you this, whether it's at a tournament or anywhere else, but do you want to turn professional when you're done? I mean, you have this great educational, you're walking out of Stanford with 2 degrees, and you seem like you're destined for more than just chasing a ball around. Have you thought that far ahead as to what you want to do after your collegiate career at Stanford?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer it completely honestly, that it's never been like top of mind for me to turn professional.
Right.
I'm going to continue. Like, I kind of like this subplot of, we have the PGA Tour U rankings, and I do believe that anyone that's able to play well enough to get status through that would probably be a bit foolish to not at least try it.
Right.
If I continue to play well throughout the rest of the year, I think I certainly have an opportunity to shake out in a good spot there. And so I'm chasing that really hard. I'm working on my game, but it's never been kind of top of mind for me to pursue golf professionally. Now, as I touched on before, I do absolutely love everything that goes into trying to play well in tournaments as well as playing in tournaments themselves. And so by no means does not pursuing a professional career mean that I won't continue to play competitively,
Right.
whether it's on, the mid-am circuit or
Oh,
continuing
no.
to play
Oh, no.
in US amateurs. Yeah, I know that's a whole different conversation, but
Could you possibly be the one to dethrone Hagestad as the best mid-amateur in the country?
easy now. We might need to have a 3-ball on that one.
I mean, I could
Like I
be.
said, no, I've gotten in his ear a little bit already, but
Well, I mean, it's.
well, Stanford USC showdown. But
Oh my
anyway,
goodness.
yeah, this is good. This is good. We're kind of unpacking it here. I assume they'll hear the episode, so I'll give Stu a shout out.
Oh, he's locked
But,
in. Yeah, he's yeah. It's always fun when I get a phone call about 2 hours after an episode's posted. I look down at Hagestad. I'm like, oh God, what do I do now?
To flatter the man a little bit, I have a long way to go before I can get to that sort of situation.
Yeah, he's not bad. He's not bad.
He's a golfer, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And he has a heck of a resume. So, I could probably make it to the PGA Tour with as much difficulty as it would take to get to where Hagestad is, or maybe even more. He's done some incredible things. But anyway, that aside, I absolutely want to continue to compete and treat golf as something that I enjoy doing. I mean, I have a lot of other passions within the game as well. But competitive golf is first and foremost for me. So I know that sounds a bit odd that
no, I'm actually
a fan of competitive golf, that I don't want to do it for a living. But that's kind of where I'm at.
I'm kind of not surprised. I'm really not surprised at your answer. Now, one would think that trying to balance a master's program and playing top level collegiate golf would take all of your time, but oh no, not only are you a championship golfer and a excellent student at Stanford, you've decided to fall down into the muddy ranks of being a golf podcaster. You and I are colleagues, and that's a frightening thing to think about. Talk to me about the genesis, and we're going to put links to your podcast called The Tie. We're going to put links to that in the show notes of this episode. A lot of people listening to this episode have also listened to me as a guest on your podcast, so we'll put links to that in the show notes. I know that you talked to me a little bit about this when you first started, but kind of share with listeners. It's you and your co-host, friend from Charlotte, Walker Simus. So, educate me, sell the listeners of this podcast on your podcast. Talk to me a little bit about The Tie.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you giving me the chance to do so. We run.
Well, we've run out of time, Henry. I really appreciate you joining me on this. No, I'm sorry. No, you go ahead. Talk to me about The Tie.
Kind of you to let me do so, but pretty common story really of people talking about starting a podcast, and oh yeah, I had a buddy that we have these conversations that seem pretty interesting. Maybe someone will want to listen. It's something along those lines. Obviously I play competitively. Walker played in college as well for Wofford College, and he actually worked for a bit in the golf course architecture space, which is something that I'm really interested in. And we both are just super passionate about the game, kind of from an architecture standpoint, as well as competition, as well as the camaraderie and everything that goes into it. And he's the kind of guy that, after I would go play a course, or after he would get off a day on the job at somewhere that he worked, on a golf course architecture project, we would just immediately hop on the horn and start talking about it. And so we just figured at some point that, hey, we both have interest in listening to golf podcasts and other podcasts, and maybe we should just get after it and see how things go. And so we kind of got into it and started recording some episodes just for fun. You were a big part of that and guiding me with some of the early steps. And we've had a blast with it. And so, yeah, anyone that's into competition, architecture, kind of the common ground between all different aspects of the game, as well as some other things in there as well. We had Joe Mayo on this week, who is my golf instructor, and I think about 40% of the conversation was Joe's theory that you really just shouldn't punt the ball. in football. So
okay. All right.
it's not just golf. Walker and I are really into food and coffee and fitness and all that sort of stuff. So we cover a lot of things, but I guess golf, to put it as simply as possible, kind of the crux of our show would be, we like to interview people who are golfers in some way, shape, or form, but there's more to them than just playing golf. And so you were a great guest coming on, talking about the Mid-Am, talking about your podcasting endeavors, talking about music, a lot of different stuff in there. So
well,
would highly recommend.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to, I think that's probably gives you a little bit of creative freedom also throughout, obviously the schoolwork is, weighs heavy, and then also you got to keep the game sharp. And that's probably a nice way just to kind of unplug all that and just, look into just some other different topics. So you had Mr. Brandon Wu on the podcast, and you've had some, had the head coach of Yale men's golf team. I got to listen to that one. Colin Sheehan.
It's a good one.
I mean,
it's a good one.
There's a lot of brain power in that episode. I'm going to need a thesaurus or some sort of a study guide to figure out. I mean, you got Stanford and Yale in one episode. That's
well, funny enough, per NCAA rules, I was not allowed, being a college golfer myself, I was not allowed to talk to Colin. And so Walker did that episode. Most of our interview episodes are just one-on-one. And so one of us will interview somebody else.
Okay. Okay.
Which was, I was concerned about letting Walker do it because I've kind of touched on Walker as a total golf course architecture junkie. I know, I guess, more than most, but not nearly as much as he does.
Okay.
Colin also knows tons about golf course architecture. So I was like, oh my goodness.
You're
what's
like,
going to happen if I turn these guys loose? I kind of had this agenda when I was going to talk to Colin of, all right, I want to hit A, B, C, D, and E, and Walker's going to talk to him. A is going to be golf course architecture. They're going to talk for an hour.
There's not going to be a B.
over.
Yeah, there's not going to be a B.
But shout out to both of them. They did a great job with that episode. And I do want to kind of substantiate just a little bit further a point you were making there of, it really has been an enjoyable process for me with having the competitive golf with college, as well as, managing the master's degree of, doing the podcast has really helped me just continue to enjoy the game. I mean, there are days where you go out and you shoot 74 and you're like, man, that was not a lot of fun. And then you go in and you record a podcast about how much you enjoyed playing whatever course it is 2 weeks ago. And so I really do think that not only has, playing competitive golf allowed me to have some interesting things to talk about in a podcasting medium, but I think being able to talk about them and, show and speak with a friend about the enjoyment of it has contributed to success on the course. It's just helped me enjoy the game a little bit more. And at the end of the day, I think that maybe it's not the same for everybody, but for me, at least, when I'm out there really just kind of enjoying myself, and that doesn't just mean laughing and joking around. It can be being pretty intense about it and enjoying playing well. But when I am and I'm just having a good time competing, that's when I'm going to play my best. And I think that the tie has had a big hand in that.
So what you're saying is that if you start a golf podcast, you too could win a national championship. That's what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, so
that's what the high school golfers should really take away from this.
I understand. Okay,
quit practicing.
Yes.
Start a podcast.
Yes.
Start drinking coffee.
Yes.
Conrad always tells me not to drink coffee, but start drinking coffee. Start a podcast, and you'll win a ring. It's pretty simple.
Okay, I'm glad. I don't know why it took an hour and a half to come to that conclusion, but it did. Wow. So I'm just thinking about, like, you're going to be kind of torn. Like, you at nationals at Grayhawk with the guys. I mean, part of you is going to want to be on the golf course winning a point for the Cardinal. The other part of you is going to want to be with me with a microphone doing I mean, you're going to be really kind of torn, aren't you? Or are you going to let me do that? You're going to let me do that. You're going to play golf.
They're going to have the cameras on me, and I'm going to have my scorecard out. They're going to think I'm writing scores down, but in reality, I'm going to be like taking notes,
podcasting notes.
So,
yeah. Is your yardage book cover going to have Stanford on it, Fear the Tree, or is it going to have like the tie? You have like a special podcast. I mean, because all this, we didn't even get into NIL. We're not even going to go there. Don't worry about that. We'll do that at a later time. So,
oh yeah, no, it's the Fear of the Tree yardage cover, but it's a total front. There's not actually a yardage book in there. It's just my notes for
I
the
understand.
podcast.
Okay.
That's how you win.
Love it.
Just start a podcast.
All right. So what else have we've covered a lot. Are we good, or can you think of anything else that I should hit on?
I think we're good, really. I mean, there are all sorts of other things we could, but yeah, it's been good. I think we got a lot of content in there. Yeah, not a whole lot else I can think of.
All right, let me close it. We can definitely do it. We could do an. I mean, I don't even know how I didn't even think about talking about NIL, but we don't need to. We can do that another time. So.
Shoot, that's a conversation for Michael Thorbjornsen, not Henry Shimp. He's the one that's getting NIL deals. I have my opinions of the matter, but that's a better question for him.
All right, let me close the episode out, and then we'll chat about that off the episode. Okay, so now that we've figured out what's in your yardage book at Nationals, glad for clearing that up. But I think we've covered quite a bit in this episode. There's always time to do another one. So for now, we're gonna end this one. But I do appreciate you coming on, talking about your experience at Stanford, obviously talking about the tie. And hey, let's try and reconnect in the spring. Enjoy your time off. Enjoy your time at Pebble Beach before you get to that little break. But Henry, I appreciate you stopping by the back of the range. It was fun.
Yeah, man, appreciate you having me. And we've completed the home and away now, but
yes,
we can make that a little series. So check out the tie. Check out our first episode with Ben, and might be another one coming there. Another one on the back of the range. We'll see.
Love it. And there you have it. Special thanks to Henry Shimp for joining me on this episode here at the back of the range. Don't forget, Henry has a podcast of his own. It's called The Tie. You can find that on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Links are in the show notes of this episode, as well as links to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure you're following the back of the range there. We'll see you next time for another episode here at the back of the range.